Okay. Hello. There we go. I forgot to plug in my microphone. Sorry about that. Anyway, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Triforce Tuesdays podcast. So today, we are going to be discussing about The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords. So the reason why that you guys will not be witnessing any gameplay at all for the sake of the stream as I'm covering this game is because I have no way of streaming the original 4 Swords. None of my friends actually do have it. Well, Sora does, but the rest of us don't. And also, I don't trust emulation, so we do apologize for the inconvenience. However, I am hosting a very special podcast tonight, which will be uploaded on YouTube soon. Which, by the way, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and tell all your friends for more amazing Zelda content as I post Zelda videos
At last,
every Tuesday.
the Keyblade's chosen one.
Oh, Jesus. Anyway, so yes. So actually, we are going to discuss this game. We're going to discuss about, Four Swords. Four Swords and all. But however, I, for one, am not alone. I am actually joined in with 4 amazing friends. So we're going to go in and start from left to right on this photo right here. So you guys already know me. I go by Born of Kokiri. I will go by Kokiri for short. I will be your host for this evening, and with me, I am joined by
Sora.
So we
Dapia.
T-Shaw, the best color, best link.
Purple is the worst color ever, and you fucking know it.
That's what you say.
Yes, exactly. But
Purple
anyway,
is the color of life, fart knocker. Get over it.
oh my god.
Exactly.
Yes, but go in and tell everybody about yourself. Tell them what y'all do. So Sora, go ahead.
So, you guys literally know me as, I guess, best mod for whatever reason.
Sora best mod. Woo!
Oh my lord, no. Anyway, I'm just your typical nerd who loves Kingdom Hearts, Legend of Zelda, other fun games like that. That's pretty much all there is to it when it comes to me.
And then we have our special guests. We have Pixie's Galaxy, aka Rosie. So go ahead, Rosie, introduce yourself. Tell everyone what you do.
Well, I am a variety streamer on Twitch. I love everything Nintendo. I will be playing anything Nintendo, but I also have a special place in my heart for Zelda, which is part of the reason why I'm here. But I do play a bunch of random games on stream as well.
Heck yeah! Let's go. And then Ostafia.
Hey everybody, you know me, Ostafia here. You know me for my puns. I've also be around a lot in other people's streams. I'm very knowledgeable about video games, and aside from the voice impressions I do, like Droopy Dog.
Yeah, when he's knowledgeable, he's kind of like the Sheldon Cooper of Big Bang Theory.
Still haven't watched that.
We need to fix that. and last but not least, can we go in and introduce yourself, you purple pipsqueak?
Oh yeah.
Purple piss.
Hello, I'm T-Shaw. I don't stream yet. Whenever I have time, and try to figure it out, maybe I will. But yeah, I love all things Nintendo, Zelda being my favorite franchise. I also love Kingdom Hearts, Devil May Cry, and yeah, that's about it.
Also, he's an extremely tall boy. I saw him in person last week with Osafia. He's a freaking tall. He's like a giant.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm a mountain apparently. So
He's a mountain.
I'm Death Mountain.
Oh God, no. Oh my God. So anyway, guys. So thank y'all for introducing me. I mean, you know me. Everybody calls me the fart knocker or the himbo. Not a himbo.
Because you're both.
Shut
Or
up.
Himbo.
Shut up. Shut up.
One of the symptoms of being a himbo is denial.
Oh my God, you're horrible. Anyway, so today, guys, so like I said earlier, the five of us, we are going to be discussing about Four Swords. So we're going to be going over, we have some different categories we're going to go over. We're going to go over theories about the game. We're going to go over lore, such as how it ties up with the rest of the Zelda games in the timeline. And then the last thing we're going to go over is how it leads up to the events of Ocarina of Time. Since down the timeline, it leads all the way to the events of Ocarina of Time. So from the top of the timeline, we have Skyward Sword, we have Minish Cap, we have this game being Four Swords, and then right after Four Swords, we have Ocarina of Time, which is my child and is the best game ever. Yes.
Next to Majora's Mask, you mean?
Yeah, next to Twilight Princess, actually.
Oh my God. But anyway, so we're gonna go in and go over some lore, and our amazing mod Sora is definitely gonna catch us up on it, and then we're gonna the five of us are definitely gonna discuss about it together. So let's go ahead and do that. So Sora, take it away.
Alright, so I have a pretty long paragraph of some research that I had filled out based on where the Fourth Sword was born, as well as up to the ending events of Four Swords. So, from my notes, it says, here's the history of the Four Swords, starting from the events of the Minish Cap up to Four Swords. Long ago, before the events of the Minish Cap took place, according to ancient legend, the world was on the verge of being swallowed by shadow. During this time, a mysterious race known as the Bakori appeared from the sky, bringing the hero of men a sword and a golden light. This sword was known as the Bakori Blade, the golden light being known as the Light Force. This hero uses his wisdom and courage along with the power of the Bakori Blade and the Light Force to banish the evil. The blade is then enshrined with care once the war has ended. During this era of peace, a Minish sorcerer named Ezlo creates a magical cap that can grant the wishes of anyone who wears it. Ezlo's apprentice, however, Vati, became fascinated with evil in the hearts of men and desired power. Against his master's wishes, he steals the magical hat and uses its power to turn Ezlo into a cap, and himself into a very powerful sorcerer. He learns of the Bakori Blade and the Light Force, which were gifts given to humans used by the hero of men to vanquish evil. Desiring this power for himself, he learns of its location in Hyrule. During the Bakori Festival, Link and his childhood friend, the Princess of Hyrule, Zelda, attend the festival together until she has to return to the castle. During this time, Vati learns if you win the sword fighting tournament at this very festival, he earns the right to touch the Bakori Blade, and upon winning it, his plans are revealed that he wants to seize its power and take the Light Force for himself. In the process, he destroys the Bakori Blade and frees the evil that was long sealed away while turning Princess Zelda into stone. Link is then tasked with restoring the Bakori Blade and returning Princess Zelda to normal by seeking help from the Minish, who only reveal themselves to children. It's during this adventure that Link learns he must seek out the four elements: Earth, Fire, Water, and Wind. After learning where the first element is, Link goes to the Minish Woods, and it's there where he meets and obtains help from Ezlo, who is still under the curse Vati had put him under. Using what powers he still has, he helps Link shrink down to the size of a Minish and enter their village, where he is able to obtain the first of the four elements. After getting this element, he must then go to the dangerous Mount Crenel, where deep in the volcano lies the element of fire. During Link's travel through this dungeon, a Minish blacksmith known as Malari is able to fix the broken sword. Link gains the element of fire and takes the now fixed Makori blade, now known as the White Sword, to the Elemental Sanctuary to infuse the two elements he now has into the sword to power it up. Once this is done, Link travels to the last two areas of Hyrule, seeking out the last of the elements and infusing them into the blade as well. Once all four elements are infused into the blade, the White Sword is fully restored to its former glory, thus the birth of the Force Sword, which gives Link the power to split himself into 4 clones, 3 of them being spiritual clones and 1 being himself. Link then earns the Life Force is being protected by Zelda as it is infused within her. Vaddie learns this at the same time and intends to extract it from Zelda, even if it means killing her. Link then travels to Hyrule Castle, which is now taken over by Vaddie, and uses the now fully powered Force Sword to vanquish him and seal him away, and then uses its power to break the curse on Zelda, who then uses what's left of the life force she had in her to free everyone else cursed by Vaddie. Then the Force Sword is enshrined once again, keeping the seal on Vaddie intact. So all this takes place during the Minish Cap, and thus that's how the Force Sword is born. And this leads up to the events of Force Sword. So over time, the blade is enshrined further, and a special sanctuary was built to protect this blade. This place is known as the Force Sword Sanctuary. Peace remained in Hyrule and all was well. But many years later, it doesn't specify how many years later, but the seal began to weaken, and Vaddie's revival was on the horizon. Zelda senses this and has Link accompany her to the sanctuary to check on the seal. But little did she know, the seal had already given out and Vaddie was freed. He kidnaps Zelda and imprisons her in his castle. Link then pulls the Force Sword from its pedestal, and upon doing this, the sword splits him into 4 links, all of them being physical clones now, as it is believed the Force Sword has gained more power over the course of time, allowing Link to actually be 4 now. Link uses this power to travel across 3 major regions of Hyrule to free the Great Fairies, who have been sealed away by Vaddie, by collecting as many rubies as possible. Because while rupees are currency, they also give magical energy to the Great Fairies of Hyrule, so acquiring as many as possible is essential for freeing them. Once Link travels to each region of Hyrule and attains at least 1,000 rupees upon defeating the boss of that region, the Great Fairy then awards Link with a silver key. Link must acquire these 3 keys to access Vaddie's castle, and upon obtaining all 3 of them, Link is able to unlock the castle where his showdown with the evil sorcerer begins. Using all his might, he uses the Force Sword's power to once again vanquish Vaddie, who is then absorbed into the Force Sword to be sealed away once again. Restoring peace to Hyrule and sealing away the evil, the Force Sword is then once again enshrined within the Force Sword Sanctuary, where the seal on Vaddie is to remain intact and the blade to be watched over and taken care of.
Interesting.
And that, I was gonna say, and that's the end of the notes.
Okay.
Which is a lot.
So, thank you, Sora, for doing that. So, like Sora said, what we already learned is that this game definitely takes place after the events of the Minish Cap. And when you do think about it as well, this Link that we now encounter in this game is not the same one chosen by the Magical Cap Ezlo. This is an entirely different incarnation. However, we have no idea of what happened to the hero of the Minish himself. I mean, some say maybe, kind of like any other incarnation, he probably must have, lived his life, or this incarnation of Link, the Force Sword Link, could possibly be a descendant of the Minish Cap Link, which is why he was able to wield the Force Sword and pull it off on the pedestal and in the Sanctuary. So, it's interesting, like how after Vati was sealed away in Minish Cap, the fact that he was able to come back just really surprised me, because when you do think about it, in Minish Cap, he started off as an apprentice for Ezlo, and then of course, he wanted and he had an evil heart, and his intentions were to take over the land of Hyrule, which is why he was able to wear the magical cap created by Ezlo to become the purple sorcerer that he was back in Minish Cap. And then we already know that he was sealed away, and the seal was beginning to break here in Four Swords, thus kidnapping Zelda. But also here, according to Hyrule Historia, it says here that Vati, who has no memory of his life as a Picori, goes on a mindless rampage. With the ability to manipulate the wind, Vati calls himself the Wind Mage and takes over the Palace of Winds. So there is definitely a lot to say about Vati actually returning. So let me ask you guys this question: what are y'all's thoughts on Vati coming back as a villain? Because when you do think about it, like, to me, I do feel like that Vati was the first villain to take over Hyrule, because back in Skyward Sword, the surface didn't have a name back then. It was just called the surface, and the surface was given the name Hyrule by Link and Zelda in honor of the goddess Hylia, since both Link and Zelda both share the bloodline of the last chosen hero for Link, and the bloodline of the descendant of the goddess Hylia for Zelda. So, what are y'all's thoughts on Vati coming back as a villain and being the first to take over Hyrule as Hyrule's first established villain? So what do you guys think about that? Ostafia, Rosie, Sora, and T-Shawn.
I find it very fascinating, like how the first renowned villain came to be before like how the rest of the Zeldas just became what we know as today.
Yeah, it just really surprised me that he legit comes back out of nowhere, and then having no recollection of his memory of just being a Picori, because it was, when you do think about it again, he already vanished. Into the Four Sword, being sealed away, and then he comes back having no idea who he is and all that stuff. T-Shaw?
I feel like with him losing his memory, again, we don't know how long it was between Minish Cap and Four Sword, and being sealed away in the sword and having just immense dark power. I feel like the dark power can just slowly take away what memories you had in the past, because all that you would ever want is, one, to break the seal, and two, to gain more dark power. And yeah, I just think Vati's really unique that way.
Yeah, it's funny, because he's very unique, because around this time, we have no idea about what happened to the legendary blade, the Master Sword, which we are going to go over in a minute. But it's funny to think about that Demise is nowhere to be found, or no incarnation of him, because when you do think about it, at the end of Skyward Sword, Demise actually places a curse on Link and Zelda throughout the rest of the bloodline, saying that he will curse and haunt them forever, and that an incarnation of himself will then rise again, thus being, the great king of evil, Ganondorf, also my father. What about you, Rosie?
I was gonna say that I find it curious that Vati is actually a Picori.
Yes.
And yeah, and I'm curious kind of how that plays into it. But at the end of the Minish Cap, I feel like we really see Vati get corrupted before he even gets sealed away, because he has so many different forms that are further and further from his original self, and I feel like that is showing the progression of his deterioration into evil.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sora.
I was gonna say I actually kind of have a little bit of a theory on that. Like I kind of feel like he deteriorated himself, like in the process. Because if you think about it, he desired that power so much that he was willing to do anything to get it. And while he was wearing that magical hat he stole from Ezlo, he was able to grant his own wishes. So the more power he wished for, the more dangerous he got, but the more corrupted he got because of the dark nature of his wishes.
Yeah. I feel like because the cap gets actually removed from Vati, but that is what originally gave him the power to get the light from Zelda. And where we leave him, he is in this like final form of just like a pure dark blob with an eyeball. And even with the hat removed, he remains at that point. So I feel like he was fully, I mean, maybe mostly corrupted before he was even sealed away.
Exactly, because the thing is, we don't know how a Picori like Vati was able to have evil desires within his heart, thus obtaining the magical cap from Ezlo and then using his wishes to become a sorcerer. Because the thing is, the magical cap that Ezlo created, we have no idea what magical elements it contains. My theory is it probably might have some connections with the Triforce, but I could be wrong. Because when you do think about it, the Triforce does have the same capabilities, such as granting the desires of both people with good hearts and people with bad hearts. So the fact that Vati was able to wear this cap on top of his head, and thus granting himself a wish to be a sorcerer, definitely really says a lot. So maybe he probably gained all that power, and the power just like ran straight into his head. And then, of course, Zelda was able to wear it at the end of Minish Cap, and thus her wish was to restore harmony and peace to the land of Hyrule, and to have all evil to be eradicated. So it really says a lot right there. But I feel like, again, that I do think that the magical cap crafted by Ezlo probably has some same characteristics and elements as the Triforce. Because when you do think about it, at the beginning of Minish Cap, it says that a tiny Picori fell from the sky and thus granted the Hylians the magical blade of the Picori. So because in Skyward Sword we have no recollection or don't know any signs of the Picori wandering around the Faron Woods, because because like Sora was saying, the Minish or the Picori can only be seen by small children, and of course back then Link was still considered a child even though he's a teenager. But so I'm probably thinking maybe there could have been a possibility that somewhere around the Faron Woods, Skyward Sword Link maybe might have passed on like a mini established version of the Minish village, and yet we didn't see it because, again, the Picori are so tiny. They're like tiny little pebbles, and you can barely see them. So I'm starting to think like where actually the sword came from, which goes on to the next category that we're going to discuss, is after during Minish Cap, we have no idea about what happens to the Master Sword. So we already know that the Master Sword was sealed away in the Sealed Temple, and thus, Impa in the past, in the Gate of Time, said that she would watch over it to make sure that no evil would escape from its seal, even though we already know what happens to old Impa in the present. But from this time, we already know that the Master Sword is still sealed away in the Sealed Temple, and Demise hasn't escaped from his prison. So my question is to you guys, what do y'all think happened to the Master Sword? Do y'all think it's still hiding somewhere, or do y'all think it still sleeps in the Sealed Temple with Fi, still playing the role as the spirit of the sword and preventing Demise from escaping, or who do you think is probably guarding it?
My personal theory is that it's still sealed within the Sealed Temple. which later becomes the Temple of Time, because that's where the Master Sword rests within Ocarina of Time, which chronologically takes place after Four Swords. So if it was anywhere else, then why would it be within the Temple of Time, which I think it was originally the Sealed Temple from Skyward Sword, because the whole time travel thing that Skyward Sword had going on with it.
Exactly.
Link literally sealed it within the pedestal of time, right in the past, before he left to go back to the present. And as far as we know, it's been there ever since.
Interesting. Yeah, because the thing is, because when you do think about it, in Minish Cap, the Kingdom of Hyrule is already established after the events of Skyward Sword, and we have no idea what happened to Link and Zelda from Skyward Sword. I'm probably thinking they probably lived on their life as Hylians after an established kingdom, and thus Link and Zelda from Minish Cap are just descendants who share the same bloodline as the hero chosen by the sword, and from Zelda from Skyward Sword. So
yeah,
that is definitely my theory about that. But Rosie,
also,
what do you? Go ahead.
My bad.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what if the Sealed Temple, otherwise known as the Temple of Time from Ocarina of Time, wasn't actually discovered during the events of the Minish Cap, and it was just...
That is actually a good theory, because think about it. Because somewhere around Hyrule and Minish Cap, the Sealed Temple itself was not discovered, but we already know it takes place in a forest area, being, outside of the Faron Woods. And the only woods that we only are familiar with ourselves is the Minish Woods in Minish Cap. And there is no sign of Faron Woods anymore, so I'm thinking maybe the Faron Woods that we knew and loved back then, probably could have been changed to the Minish Woods, and thus, out of the open, since the Highlands can't see the Minish, but only is revealed by children, they probably have their own established village going on and everything. So I feel like that maybe that the Sealed Temple is still lying around somewhere in Hyrule, just waiting for the next hero chosen by the sword, waiting to be discovered, which thus, of course, we already know that's the hero of time himself from Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, and I personally think that somewhere in between Four Swords and Ocarina of Time, the Temple of Time got discovered by the royal family, and chose to keep watch over the blade. That's what I'm thinking, at least.
What about you? Go ahead.
I forgot what I was going to say.
No, I was going to say, because you were saying like it was like discovered by it's probably, there's a theory that later on after the events of Four Swords, the royal family of Hyrule were the ones who discovered the Temple of Time. And when you do think about it, because in Ocarina of Time, Zelda was the one who knew about it, and she approached Link about it, saying, this is why she was able to send the Hero of Time on a task to go collect the 3 spiritual stones, and then thus, using the key to open the Door of Time, being the magical instrument known as the Ocarina of Time, which, in my theory, still actually has some capabilities, like the Time Stone from Skyward Sword, since the Time Stone was able to play a role of showing some past and present events throughout the history and time, which definitely explains like how the Hero of Time itself was able to go back and forth in time, was because I feel like that the Ocarina of Time was made by the same material from the Time Stones in Skyward Sword.
That's actually a theory I've had for a while as well, in regards to the Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
But one thing I actually kind of feel like in regards to the Temple of Time's discoverability is going back to what you said about how Zelda knew about it, like the Temple of Time itself. If you think about it, it makes a lot more sense if you put the pieces together in regards to who Zelda originally was. In Skyward Sword, it was revealed that she was the reincarnation of the goddess Hylia, who, of course, created the Master Sword in the first place. What if that's the same case in Ocarina of Time?
That is actually a really good question to think about.
Yes, it
Because
is.
Hold on,
my personal theory is if she's the goddess's reincarnation in Skyward Sword, that's going to be the same case for the other games too.
exactly. Exactly.
I do.
Go ahead, teacher.
Wait, sorry, go on. Oh, just a thought. Like, if just hypothetically, if they did find the Master Sword, I wonder if like you went in like the final battle with Vati, like would the Master Sword like seal Vati away along with Demise / Ganondorf, or would the Master Sword just vanquish him and he wouldn't be sealed away, or he wouldn't have like any return or anything like that?
That's a really good
That's
question.
a
That's a
good
good
question,
question to think
actually.
about, because when you do think about it, the Fourth Sword, both the Fourth Sword and the Master Sword, definitely have the same capabilities of sealing evil away. However, I guess maybe because it does work very different. They both swords work differently from each other. Like the Master Sword is able to have amazing power, and thus with Link striking down the pedestal of time and Ocarina of Time, allowing the hero of time to go back in time to both past and present, which is also was capable of sealing evil away, which thus Demise was sealed away at the end of Skyward Sword. So if the Master Sword struck Vati down, I feel like that it could probably either, as you were saying, Tisha, it could probably maybe strike down Vati for good and probably end up killing him, or it could just have the same element as the Fourth Sword and just stealing him away.
I actually feel like this is the perfect time for me to bring up a point. I personally feel like that the Fourth Sword and the Master Sword can actually have the same sealing power. And the only reason I'm saying this is because I've played and beat the game quite recently. Similarly to how Demise was sealed within the Master Sword at the end of Skyward Sword, Vati is sealed within the Fourth Sword in the exact same way. He's literally absorbed into the Fourth Sword.
What are your thoughts on Safia?
Well, from how I believe, like how if Vati could be sealed from the Master Sword, I feel like he'd mostly be vanquished, because reason is like that how the Master Sword came to be like with its true power saw in Skyward Sword is that yes, you use the sacred flames to forge the sword itself, and then with the blessing of the goddess Hylia, Zelda, it gives it that golden glow, which is be known as the blade of evil's bane, in which evil can never touch it.
Exactly.
So if Vati was struck by this Master Sword, I feel like he would mostly be vanquished. Only reason that Demise was sealed is because how powerful his evil is. That pure malice is like too powerful that it cannot be destroyed completely.
Exactly. Exactly, because that is why it is called the Blade of Evil's Bane, because as Osafia was saying, any evil who touches it or gets struck down, they will either get sealed away or will perish for all eternity. What are your thoughts, Rosie?
Well, I was actually thinking while I was doing my research that when they kind of fixed the Picori sword, it seemed rather similar to Skyward Sword and the Sacred Flames in the sense of collecting elements from each of these areas. And so to me, I feel like it might interact with evil similarly because of how they're both infused with power, very closely to each other related,
Yeah, and I do feel you on that, because that is a good thing that Rosie did bring up. So around the time when the Master Sword first started off as the Goddess Sword, this was a task sent by Skyward Sword Link, to where he had to go through many trials and to obtain the 3 secret flames for the Goddess Sword to be restored to its full potential. And that's later on, before Zelda got put to sleep, she was able to give her royal blessing, and thus giving, as Osafia was saying earlier, giving the Master Sword its golden power to eliminate and eradicate all evil. That is definitely but as we were saying earlier, y'all, like, I do feel like that after the events of Four Swords, after Vati was perished and sealed away for good, I do feel like that somewhere along the lines that now we have a new descendant, being a new descendant of the goddess Hylia, being Princess Zelda from Ocarina of Time, because when you do think about it, at a young age, she was able to study under Impa, who was more like her teacher, her caretaker, and her instructor. So I'm thinking that maybe Impa probably was able to show this incarnation of Zelda before the events of Ocarina of Time. But what do y'all think? So my question to Sora, Rosie, Osafi, and Tisha, my question is, do you think young Zelda discovered this alone before the events of Ocarina of Time? Or do you think Impa was the one who showed her and introduced her to the Seal Temple, and as her teacher and caretaker was able to explain to her about the past events before everything else that happened in Ocarina of Time, before she served her purpose as a role of being the young princess of Hyrule to the royal family?
Well, there's no clear-cut answer to it, but I personally feel like Impa may have helped her discover it, or at least shown it to her, with her being a Sheikah, just like how she was in Skyward Sword. And I also think that she sensed Zelda's lineage during this time as well, that being that she is the reincarnation of Hylia. So, I think during this time before Ocarina of Time took place, she may have helped Zelda discover the whereabouts of the Master Sword, just based on that alone.
Mm-hmm. That could definitely...
But, like I said, there's no clear-cut answer, so...
That is true. What do you think, Osapia?
Well, from what Sora said, yeah, I feel the same way, since we know that the Sheikahs are agents to the goddess Hylia herself. And yes, and what we know from Zelda, that she didn't know much of her role as the goddess, but Impa pretty much had to guide her to it to know her true potential, like what she is in her role alone. So yes, I believe, yes, Impa's probably what guided Princess Zelda from Ocarina of Time to the Temple of Time.
Okay. Tisha?
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Excuse me. I agree. I'd say Impa helped her discover. Just. Sorry, I went totally blank.
No, it's
Just
okay.
went totally blank.
That makes you more of a bigger nerd than you already are.
So, case in point, you're on the same page.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Rosie?
Yeah, I've always been convinced that Impa knows way more than she lets on. She just seems to have an air of, like, secrets. And so I definitely think that because Zelda was just a kid, Impa definitely knew more. And, I mean, that was her purpose, really, was to guide and protect Zelda.
Yeah, because, like I was saying, because everything that Zelda had to learn was, about the story, like how the three golden goddesses were able to go their separate ways and thus creating the Triforce. I feel like that was told under the tale of Impa, but I think if I'm correct, but I feel like maybe she probably might have learned something from her mother, who we don't know anything about. So that could be another possibility. Of course, we have no recollection of who Zelda's mother from Ocarina of Time probably is. I'm probably thinking maybe it probably could be maybe a descendant of Four Sword Zelda, or maybe it could be someone else who was part of the royal family of Hyrule. And plus, the thing is, when you do think about it, we don't even get to see the king himself. We already know that the king was killed by Ganondorf during the events of Ocarina of Time. Because, and around the beginning of Ocarina of Time, we know that Ganondorf has come to Hyrule. He goes to speak with the king, and thus he swears allegiance to Zelda's father. But we already know that his intentions were that he wanted to come to Hyrule in order to collect the Triforce and the rest of the spiritual stones, since the spiritual stones in the Ocarina of Time Ocarina of Time alone played a special role, as they serve as the key to opening the door of time, and thus, he needed somebody to pull out the Master Sword, since the Master Sword also plays a key of opening the door to the Sacred Realm, which does, however, Ganon was able to obtain that sacred power. So, now since we're talking about my dad here, oh god, here we go.
Oh boy, here we go.
Here we go. So, my question to you guys is, to the four of you here in this voice chat. So, we already know about how the Gerudo tribe works. We already know that the Gerudo is run by mostly a tribe of women, and thus every 100 years, a man is born, and thus that man is, well, Ganondorf. But however, we also do think about that we do have two witches, very important witches, throughout the events of Ocarina of Time, who were caretakers to Ganondorf, being Koyume and Kotake, aka Twin Rova. So my question to the four of you is, around this time during the events of Four Swords, do y'all think that the Gerudo tribe was already beginning to start forming? And where do y'all think Koyume and Kotake came from before the events of raising Ganondorf as one of their own?
That's a really good question. I never thought about that.
Yeah, like there's not much untold origins between those two witches themselves. Like that's a very interesting point right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, isn't there's not really a desert area in Minish Cap or Four Sword, isn't there?
No, there isn't.
There isn't.
Yeah, so there's not really a desert for them to establish in, so...
I think the last time we see Twin Rova before Ocarina of Time was during the Oracle games, because she appears as a boss during those games, if you get the true ending. But that's literally the last time you see her.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Rosie.
And that's also in like another timeline too, so...
True.
Yeah, that's also true. So, honestly, there's no clear-cut answer to this, or even a real way to piece this together.
Yeah. What about you, Rosie? What do you think about...
There could be a desert area, because in Skyward Sword, there was a desert area.
That is true.
And it could just be outside of the bounds of where we can explore in Minish Cap or Four Swords. And it might be because in this area there was the Gerudo forming.
I'll be back.
Yeah, no problem, Zoro. Take your time. Yeah, so the thing is that we do think about is that Link from Minish Cap and Link from Four Swords, they haven't discovered the deserts of Wanneroo, because around that time, it wasn't ran by the Gerudo tribe. It was just an empty, barren desert. And then when you do think about it, we do kind of see, I don't know if y'all remember around the events of Skyward Sword, but we also saw what is supposedly to be ruins of the Temple of Time in Skyward Sword. I don't know if y'all remember that, but this was after Link was able to fight Moldarak, but was able to discover Garaham, who was attacking both Impa and Zelda outside of the Wanneroo Desert.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like later on, maybe because the thing is, we don't know who plays the role as the first Gerudo. Of course, because I know everybody's been going on that theory saying that maybe Groose, the Groose is loose. That Groose probably could have been the first Gerudo, but I don't think that's been confirmed or anything. Or supposedly that probably could have been that probably could have been just a silly meme or theory.
I love Groose.
Honestly, we do love Groose. Groose is such a wholesome character. Like, he's just full of life and everything, but we all know about
character development.
He had quite the character development, and plus, I even got to play Groose in my Skyward Sword video. Oh no. What happened to Zelda? Everything's all gone. Nothing can stop anything with the power of Bruce. We're gonna call this adventure The Legend of Bruce. That was just a joke. Yeah, which are lines he does say at the end of Skyward Sword. And then he's just like, let me give you a hug, Granny. I know I can play a role serving the purpose of helping out Link over here. Is there something I can do? Oh my god. Okay. So I know Sora is gonna be MIA for a while. So next question that we are definitely going to be going over in regards to 4 swords is, okay, so in a Minish Cap, we did have something very important. We had a place called the Elemental Sanctuary, and this door, the Elemental Sanctuary, as Eslo stated in Minish Cap, definitely plays a role to where it is open every 100 years, to where both the Hylians and the Minish could meet. And when you do think about it, Ezra was able to close that door for good. And this Elemental Sanctuary was just a hidden room that was kept away from the Minish, but also this was the first place to where Link could actually use the Picori Blade, and thus using the power of the 4 elements he obtained, and to fuse it into the 4 sword. So, my question to the 4 of y'all, well, the 3 of y'all for now, until Sora comes back, do y'all think that there is still a hidden door somewhere in Hyrule to where both the Highlands and the Minish could actually meet once again? Or do y'all think that Aswell, as I stated before at the end of Minish Cap, was able to close this door for good? Because when you do think about it, the Highlands and Minish can see each other for one every century.
Well, I feel like that is still a possibility. Like, not much has been said about this in other parts of other Zelda games, but I finally believe, like, yes, there is still, like, that chance, like, there is another entryway where they can cross that line, just go meet the humans and all.
Mm-hmm. What about you, T-Shaw?
Yeah, I'd probably say that the door still does exist, but since it just hasn't been brought up in any other Zelda game,
mm-hmm.
I feel like maybe like in current time, like let's say Breath of the Wild time, nobody knows about it, and it might be written down in like the Hyrule Castle library or something like that, or some sort of ancient record. But I want to say maybe in Breath of the Wild time, people just don't know that it exists, but it still does, but nobody knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the Minish store, right? I just got back, so.
Yeah. So we're talking about. So
welcome back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, so Sora. So right now I'm asking the four of y'all right now. I was talking about the door to the. If you remember in Minish Cap, we had the door to the Elemental Sanctuary and how it played a role to where every century the door does open to where both the Minish and the Hylians can actually unite and meet each other.
Right.
So we're thinking about, do you think a door somewhere like that still exists in Hyrule? Or do you think it's like Ezlo said, the door is now closed for good?
I believe the door still exists, but it is at the same time still closed. Because the door, if I remember right, is only supposed to be able to open once every 100 years. If I remember right.
Yeah, it's every 100 years. The door to the Elemental Sanctuary opens every 100 years, and thus, both the Minish and the Hylians can interact with one another.
Yeah, I actually have a little bit of a theory that the door to the Elemental Sanctuary could have at least been seen or referenced in Breath of the Wild, Because if you think about it, the Minish were originally going to be in Breath of the Wild, but they got scrapped.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting to think about. Rosie?
It might just be wishful thinking, but I really hope the door is still accessible. I don't think, I mean, from what I know, it hasn't made another appearance, but I would love to see the Picori come back, the Minish come back. And so I really hope so. And I don't see why they would take that away.
Exactly.
So I think, yeah, I think it still exists. I still think that there is a flourishing Picori population.
I do believe so that somewhere around in Hyrule we still have as Rosie was saying, there could be a flourish Picori population hidden somewhere in the land of Hyrule, but we have no idea of where it is, because again, the Minish people and the village itself, they're very tiny, so they're kind of like ants to Hylian people. So clearly, we can't see it. They can't see them, but they can only be seen by children, but also these children have to have pure hearts in order for them to be seen. And which is why we go back to... Huh?
Oh, sorry. I just had a thought, but you can go on.
Yeah, okay. But, because when you do think about it, Link from Minish Cap, we already know that he had a pure heart, he did share the same bloodline as the hero chosen by the goddess Hylia, being Link from Skyward Sword. So I'm thinking that the only way that Link was able to see the Minish after given a task by King Dovnus, from Minish Cap, they were aware that Link did have a good heart, and thus he was able to see the Picori in the Minish village, and thus that's why he was able to see as well in his even though he was still cursed around that time. But it's really interesting to think about, and I do feel like maybe the door probably could be there and is probably hiding somewhere. And I would like to see, probably in Breath of the Wild 2, if maybe Link actually discovers the elemental sanctuary somewhere in like ruins of Hyrule, and does maybe maybe the Picori will task Link into helping restore the Master Sword, because we already know that in Breath of the Wild 2, the Master Sword is done. It's destroyed. Well, it's already destroyed, and now he's already on the sacred task that we don't know about, in order to return the Master Sword to its full potential. So, thinking about it now, in Minish Cap, the Minish blacksmith, right outside the volcano by the name of Malari, he was able to take upon the Picori blade for Link and was able to fix it. So, I do feel like that maybe in Breath of the Wild 2, I do feel like that probably Link can probably discover the doors to the Minish world, thus using one of the portals around Hyrule, using that ability to shrink himself into Minish size. And I do feel like that maybe he'll probably run into Malari again, or a descendant of Malari, and thus entrusting that Picori to restore the broken Master Sword, just like what he did with the Force Sword around the time that it was the Picori blade. So I do feel like there is a door somewhere that's just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, that's one thing I do hope for Breath of the Wild 2 is the Minish that were scrapped from Breath of the Wild make a return in Breath of the Wild sequel. I think that would be really, really cool. I think they can implement it in some way, shape, or form.
And possibly they could. Maybe this is just crazy talk, but maybe the Minish could have possibly found a way to go back up into the sky too. They may not even be on the surface anymore. They may be in the ruins that are up in the sky.
Ooh,
in Breath of the Wild too, and maybe that's where the door for the.
That's a really good point, because if you think about it, if they do descend back into the sky, and we have to go to the sky in Breath of the Wild 2, which clearly from the trailers we do, what if we run into them up there, where they originally descended from?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
That's a really good thought.
It's a really good theory, because if y'all, like I mentioned before, if y'all remember around the beginning of the Minish Cap, it was said that it was said around the beginning that a tiny Picori did fall from the sky. So we probably oh my god, I lost track of words.
They descended from the sky. And,
yeah, they came from the sky, and I do feel like that's somewhere along the sky of Breath of the Wild. Too, they could be somewhere within the ruins up there. And I feel like maybe Link will discover them in the sky somewhere, in the sky ruins.
Yeah, because honestly, I've wondered for a while where the Minish descended from, like from the sky. Because I know it just wasn't like from the sky. It had to be somewhere like within the sky.
Yeah, it could
we
be
know
possibly.
we know nothing about their home up in the sky.
Okay. We do have a response from our amazing mod, Marina, and she says, if I were to point out the massive emphasis on the 100 years, 100 years for the Picori door to open, 100 years for Mayo Gerudo to be born, 100 years for the hero to sleep, seems to be too much of a coincidence to simply brush under the rug. You know, honestly, that's very interesting to think about.
It is
Valid,
interesting
indeed.
to think about, but one thing about that is that all three of those are all separate events.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they definitely are.
The only thing
that's true.
they have in common is the amount of time that they spend, but they're still all three separate events. They're not really directly linked to each other.
Exactly. Okay.
However, I do like the train of thought you were going with there.
Yeah, that's definitely very interesting to think about because when you do think about it, you know, the number 100 has kind of been like an ongoing number for past Zelda games. Like, you know, the Elemental Sanctuary being open every 100 years, the Hero of the Wild being put to rest for 100 years after losing his memory in the Shrine of Resurrection. Mostly, I feel like that the number 100 definitely plays a very, I don't know if this is the right word, a very important or integral role throughout the Zelda universe.
Oh,
Yeah.
I want to know your thoughts on this. Marina just said, "Funny you mentioned that, sort of call me crazy, but I think it could be a reference to it could reference the separate timeline."
That's a good one. That is actually indeed a good one to think about. It probably could be a reference to the timelines because a lot of events do happen for so many years. Like, I know I'm jumping the gun to another timeline, but we do think about that. You know, after the events of Phantom Hourglass, the events of Spirit Tracks takes place 100 years after the events of Phantom Hourglass. Which is why we saw Link's old pirate buddy Nico. You know, he's now an old man now, and this Link is, you know, the hero of trains. This is not the hero of wind that we're familiar with. It looks like him, but it's just somebody else who takes on the name as the hero of winds.
His literal descendant, basically.
Pretty much, yes. Alright, so now, here is another question now. So, after the events of Four Swords, we actually do not see the Four Sword for a while, because now we have an important blade, now playing a very major role in Ocarina of Time, being the Master Sword. So, my question is to you four, what do y'all think happened to the Four Sword itself? Do you think it was laid to rest in the Four Sword Sanctuary, waiting for another hero to discover it? Or do you think maybe, in the events of Ocarina of Time, the hero of time has not yet discovered the Four Sword Sanctuary, and somewhere in Hyrule, the Sanctuary is far away somewhere in the land of Hyrule?
I just think the Four Sword Sanctuary is off somewhere in Hyrule, completely undiscovered in Ocarina of Time. I know for a fact that it's currently laid to rest for another hero, because after Four Swords, Ocarina of Time takes place, and if I remember right, on the child timeline, Four Swords Adventure takes place.
Yes. Four Swords Adventures takes place after the events of Twilight Princess. From there on
Yes.
out. So, and
Four Swords Adventures. I know I'm jumping the gun, and this has something to do with like the current game we're talking about. But Four Swords Adventures continues the Four Swords legacy started by the Minish Cap.
exactly, because in the beginning of Four Swords Adventures, Zelda actually discovers this and confronts Link that she senses that something bad is going to happen, and thus she takes Link to the Four Sword Sanctuary, where the Four Sword is sleeping, and then of course they have the six sages opening a portal to a magical world, but that's they get interrupted, and they get interrupted by a shadow version of Link, and thus we see that Vati around that same era has returned.
Yep.
So, Osafia, do you think that maybe somewhere that the Four Sword Sanctuary, after the events of Four Swords, still exists, and the Four Swords still sleeping, and maybe which kind of leads up to why the Hero of Time has not discovered it yet?
Yes, I do believe that the sword does indeed exist. From what we know, yes, like the sword was indeed sealed away again after the adventures of like Four Swords. And from what I have played in Four Swords Adventures. Yes, like I still believe yet that the sword still rests, just waits for another incarnation of the hero to discover it.
Exactly. What about you, T-Shaw?
Honestly, yeah, I don't really have anything like new to add into that. Just I agree. Just it's waiting for another hero to be wielded by, and just nothing really more to add to that.
Exactly, and we already know that hero's not going to be you.
How dare you? Is it because I'm purple?
It's okay. We like picking on you. We love you too, Shaw.
Yeah.
Rosie?
I don't have much to add on that, but I do find it interesting that we do seem to be shifting from sword to sword, and the other sword seems to just not exist in the next game or whatever. And I also, this is kind of random, but I wanted to kind of note that I find it interesting that in Skyward Sword they have the Master Sword, and in Ocarina of Time they have the Master Sword, and both of them have huge elements of time travel.
Yes. That's really interesting to think about. And she does have a point, because, both the Master Sword from Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time. Wow, I almost said Twilight Princess.
Good job.
Good job.
Shut up. Anyway, so I can't. No, I'm just laughing now. Oh my god, this is my fault. Anyway, but yeah, like Rosie was saying, that Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time, their Master Swords definitely play very integral roles of having both heroes, both Link from Skyward Sword and the Hero of Time, to traverse from both to the past and present. So, and it does, and like Rosie was saying, it is capable of having the same elements of time traveling traversal, pretty much. So, exactly. Now, I know we kind of discussed about it with Ganon earlier. So now, around this game, after the events of Four Sword, we now already know that we already have a Gerudo Desert already established already. We already have a tribe of women. Vase was run by the Sage of Spirit, Naburu, at the time. But then, of course, every 100th century, the man is born, and thus that first Gerudo male was Ganondorf, who is also the incarnation of the Demon King Demise. So, my question to you four is, do y'all think that after the events of Four Swords, do you think that now somebody discovered the ancient desert of Wanneroo and was able to form their own tribe, and before that, I guess, Naburu came into play, and thus she was the one who ran the entire desert herself.
I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense because in the Minish Cap, Hyrule was really established already, and that trend continues within Four Swords. You have an established kingdom, but no knowledge of the desert until Ocarina of Time during this portion of the timeline. So somewhere in between there, the Gerudo had to have discovered this desert and decided to use it as their place to basically form their tribe and live their life.
Interesting.
There's no concrete answer on it, but it's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Yeah, definitely does make a lot of sense, because when you do think about it, we have no idea where Twinrova or the witches Koyume and Kotaki come from. Does let alone Naburu. They just step into the roles of filling in for Ocarina of Time. So, Astafia?
Yeah, I agree with what Sora has said. Yeah, from what we've seen from Skyward Sword, you started off with a civilization up in the sky, and then brought down to the surface and created a kingdom, the land known as Hyrule today. Eventually, just becoming a small civilization at first in Diminished Cap, and then eventually becomes a kingdom within Four Swords, and then finally, yeah, maybe a random individual just found out to create a civilization within the desert, and that's probably how the Gerudo tribe came to be.
Interesting to think about. T-Shaw?
I'm trying to think of a way of how to phrase this.
That's okay.
So that's not helping.
Is it in a way that even a fart knocker could understand?
Wow. Okay. Anyway, continue, T-Shaw.
Okay, so as far as so the only people that really knew about the Lanayru Desert from Skyward Sword were Girahim, Link, Zelda, Impa, and Fi, and of course that ancient civilization and the pirate ship and all that stuff. But it's never said who or if anyone else came across the Lanayru Desert after that point. So the only people at that time with or in Skyward Sword, we're just those guys, and someone just happened to stumble upon it, and there you go. They're the Gerudos.
Yeah, interesting. What about you, Rosie?
I feel like the deserts are pretty much a mystery to me. I don't know that much about the lore behind the deserts. I'm kind of obsessed with the wooded areas of Hyrule. But I would like to know more about how that works, that every 100 years Ganon is reborn? But I'm not sure how it was established. I mean, I'm trying to think of how that could have come to be from Skyward Sword, because originally it was... Well, that was the future of having the robots there.
Exactly.
And somebody had... Yeah, and I'm thinking, somebody would have to make those?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, right after the events of Skyward Sword leading up to Minish Cap and Four Swords, we have no idea what actually happens to the ancient robots. We don't know what happened to Skipper, who played a guide for Link to for him to discover the ancient sand ship. So
Mhm.
so we don't know what happened to the ancient robots. Because when you do go back to Skyward Sword, we already know that the ancient robots are all, they're all decrepit. Like they're all like, like they're non-functionable anymore, and they can't move unless Link is able to go back in time, thus striking the time stone, and does using the oils of an ancient flower that can be discovered in the deserts of Wanneroo, which allows the tiny robots like Scrapper and Skipper for them to start functioning again. So I'm thinking maybe like their lifestyle probably just got somewhere eradicated, and maybe like not that many people in Hyrule during the events of both Minish Cap and Four Swords probably forgot about the ancient civilization of the tiny robots, because again, after this time, the deserts of Wanneroo haven't been discovered yet, and thus it gets discovered later on in Ocarina of Time, and thus we already know that Gerudo Valley starts beginning to form, along with the haunted wastelands, but also the Gerudo Colossal.
Yeah, it just makes me think that there was a society back then that lived beside the robots, the ancient robots. And which makes me think that possibly the civilization that was in Wanneroo might be one of, like, the oldest.
It probably could be, because maybe there could have been signs or references to them in Ocarina of Time, because what you do think, because we go back to one place being, well, actually two places in the Gerudo Desert, thus having the Haunted Wastelands and the Gerudo Colossal. And when you do think about it, the Haunted Wasteland was a place to where, like, it was like, there's like death in there, pretty much. And as from there, in the Gerudo Colossal, we have like the ancient temple being the spirit temple as well. So I'm probably thinking that maybe somewhere in the depths of the Gerudo Colossal, plus the Haunted Wasteland, there probably could have been maybe lost memories of the ancient civilization of the robots from Skyward Sword, and thus, before somebody discovered the Wanneroo Desert, now these robots are they're now extinct, and they no longer exist anymore. Pretty much. If that makes sense. Oh, and Sora's back.
Now that you mention it, I kind of do wonder what happened to that robot, or those robots in general.
Yeah,
Right?
we were just talking about it, because we were thinking about like maybe somewhere like in the Haunted Wastelands of the Gerudo Colossal, which is the place outside of the Spirit Temple. There probably could have been maybe lost memories somewhere, or something to do with them, or maybe like memories of them somewhere within the Haunted Wasteland. Because when you do think about it, Sora, you remember the Haunted Wastelands played a role of being a place of death, kind of similar to the Kakariko graveyard.
This is true.
So do you think maybe there could have been some probably ghosts or maybe memories of some of those ancient robots, or maybe some other creatures that haven't been discovered for a while, ever since Skyward Sword?
Honestly, it's possible. Like, I don't have anything that could point to it, but it's definitely not outside of the realm of possibility.
It could be a possibility. Alright, so now, go ahead, what were you going to say, Tisho?
Oh, I was just saying, So.
I thought you were saying, that you're a purple nerd.
Pick on the purple. Pick on the purple.
Exactly.
Hey, it's better than green.
Hey,
Yeah.
First of all, I will have y'all know that green is the most definitive color out there. It is far superior. Do not at me for it.
Yeah, but purple is the most regal color.
Ooh, we got you there.
Got you there.
Man, I quit.
You can't quit. You've been fired.
Oh my god. Okay, so, alright. So our next question we're gonna definitely jump into is, tying closely to both Four Swords and Ocarina of Time. We already know about the story about Zelda's mother. And by Zelda, I mean by young Princess Zelda from Ocarina of Time. And what she was saying in Ocarina of Time is that she was able to learn the stories about the Golden Triforce and like other past events. So my question to you four is, who do y'all think Zelda's mother really is?
Her mother.
Because the thing is, we don't get to see Zelda's mom.
The only thing I could be completely off base with this, but the only thing I can think of, if going back to my theory about Zelda is true, and her being the reincarnation of Hylia in each of the games, I would have to say her mother would be the goddess Hylia.
Oh, you think so?
That's the only thing I can think of. I mean, I know for a fact that she would, I guess, have to have like a physical mother who lives in Hyrule, but we never see her in any of the Zelda games, ever. As a matter of fact, she's never even spoken of. The only parent Zelda ever talks about is her father, the King of Hyrule. But there's no question of her mother.
That's a very interesting theory to think about.
Yep.
Yeah, so, like, if that's the case, the only logical thing I can come up with is the goddess Hylia being Zelda's mother. Seeing as how she is the reincarnation of Hylia, which I know that's a little bit of a flip-flop contradiction, if you think about it, because a reincarnation would be, like, the goddess Hylia being reborn. But that was the case for Skyward Sword Zelda. Not necessarily Zelda from the other games. Each Zelda is a direct descendant of each other.
Exactly. Just like same definitely goes for both Link and Ganon as well. They're both descendants of one another. Like all Links definitely share the same bloodline as the other heroes, but the one who started it all was Link from Skyward Sword. And then of course and then Ganondorf being shared bloodlines and descendants of the Demon King Demise.
Yeah, so like the only thing I can come up with, at least from like Minish Cap onward, if Hylia is not Zelda's mother, like in the way you would think, at least spiritually, I think that's the case in some way.
Exactly. That's a good one to think about. Osafia, who do you think Zelda's mom is in Ocarina of Time?
Zelda's mom for Ocarina of Time, like, from given that no every time like every Zelda is born, they normally always have like the power of the goddess. So like what I believe like to be Zelda's mother, I like to believe it's probably like the timeline when she gives birth. I'm not sure if she like maybe dies when she gave birth to the child or not. Like that's one we don't know.
Exactly.
That is a possibility. Hang on, I'll be back again.
No, it's okay. I'll finish up for Sora. But that could be a possibility because, like Sora was saying, like, because we already know that the goddess Hylia is gone, but her bloodline definitely shares with the rest of the descendants of every incarnation of Zelda herself. So it could be a possibility that maybe somewhere along the lines of Ocarina of Time, after the events of Four Swords, maybe the goddess Hylia probably took on a physical form, and thus, playing a role as Zelda's mother and guardian in Ocarina of Time. But that could definitely be a very strong possibility to think about. T-Shaw?
I did have something, but it left me.
No, try it. What do you think? Go for it.
Yeah, it left me. I had something, but I lost it.
No, it's okay. You're good. What do you think, Rosie? Who do you think Zelda's mom was in Ocarina of Time?
Okay, I kind of have a crazy theory. It's out there.
Shoot.
So I'm wondering if it doesn't, because okay, it's descendants of the original Zelda, which is from Skyward Sword, which is the reincarnation of the goddess Hylia or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if it's not exactly who is giving birth to Zelda, but the time of which it's happening?
Oh.
Hmm.
Ooh, I like this one.
So it doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, this is sad to say, but it doesn't necessarily matter who Zelda's mom is. It's that it's happening during the time of the resurrection of Ganon, which would just magically create the new descendant of the goddess of Hylia.
Actually, yeah, that was my thought, because I feel like Ganon is born first, and then the bloodline between or Link, and then Zelda gets born next, or reincarnated or whatever, and then Link shortly after that. So, don't know who's giving birth to who, or who's materializing who, but that's actually a really solid point. Yeah.
That is really interesting to think about. Anyway, so let's definitely go on to. But yeah, that's definitely interesting to think about because we don't know about who Zelda's mom really is, but we do know that she also before she actually passes on her teachings to Impa, I do feel like that as a role model and a mother and guardian, she was able to, I feel like she probably could be, like Rosie said, like maybe like more of a descendant of the prince of all the other princesses of Hyrule, like from Skyward Sword, Minish Cap, and Four Swords. But I do feel like she was more of a teacher and guardian to young Princess Zelda before the events where she passed away and just went on her teachings to Impa, who Impa was able to play the role as quote Zelda's mom, because you already know that Impa was more like her teacher and her caretaker, and that's why Zelda was able to grow to be an adequate leader to run her own kingdom at an older age.
I do kind of wonder.
Go ahead, Sora. Oh, welcome back, Sora.
Thanks. I do kind of wonder if, like in a future Zelda game, we actually do get to see Zelda's mother before she passes away.
That would be really cool, because the thing is, we already know in some games about Zelda's father, and we've seen mostly a lot of incarnations of the King of Hyrule. First we do see we first seen King Dolphnus, who is the King of Hyrule from Minish Cap. And then of course, in other games we see, we don't see Zelda's non-existent name of a father in Ocarina of Time, but we already know that he died under the clutches of Ganondorf when Ganondorf came to take over Hyrule. And then of course we have King Daphnis No Hands in Hyrule from Wind Waker, which honestly to me he definitely is honestly one of the best kings of Hyrule. I mean, can we just be for real for a second? That honestly, to me, I feel like that Daphnis No Hands in Hyrule, the king from Wind Waker, is probably the best king, since he is a talking boat, and he played more as like a caretaker, a father, and like a teacher to the hero Winds himself.
Yep, I have to agree. Not sure how he can turn into a talking boat, but I'm not questioning it.
Yeah, but they're just
that's true.
Yeah, but there have just been so many kings, like kings from Link to the Past, and also Zelda NES, which is referenced in the manual. But also we also do have our newcomer king. We also do have King Rome from Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity, and probably supposedly Breath of the Wild 2, if we do get a chance to see the king again, because we don't know what happens, because now how if Age of Calamity is canon, it's more like a yes and no kind of thing.
Yeah.
So now here's our next question now. So as Sora mentioned, Link. So in Four Swords, Link actually needed to gather the 3 keys in order to enter the Palace of Winds and the realm to where Vati actually resides. So we do have 3 fairies, and right here in my book of Hyrule Historia, it says here that the Great Fairy of Forest protects the region known as the Sea of Trees. The Great Fairy of Ice protects the Talus Cave, and the Great Fairy of Flame protects Death Mountain. And these great fairies were the ones who gave Link the keys to the Palace of Winds, or Vati's castle. So my question to the 4 of you is, do you think that maybe these great fairies are descendants of the other great fairies across the timeline, also in Ocarina of Time and the rest of the other Zelda games?
That's interesting, because I actually agree with that, because now I think about it, like for first of which, like, the fairy you get for Zora's Wind is like out in Zora's domain, and that's in ice as the adults, or water if you're a child. So that's like one of the fairies you get for the keys in Four Swords Adventures. And the fairy you get from out in Death Mountain, which is in Death Mountain Crater, that's also like which Great Fairy of Fire, actually in there, also in the Ocarina of Time. Well, the one for the forest, I believe that one you find is like pretty much the one out in near Hyrule Castle.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Yeah, I didn't really think of it that way.
I have another crazy theory.
What you got, Rosie?
Okay. So I was doing my research, and in Skyward Sword, the fairies, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on their names. The main ones. The ones that represent the elements, the Farron and Goddess Linnea. Yeah, them. They come from the sky. They came to this land, and it kind of makes me curious if they're actually related to the Picorians, because they also came from the sky, from a nondescript place.
Ooh, I really do like this one. So I do feel like that maybe these fairies might have a connection to the Picori, because when you do think about it, like, how do you think that this Picori blade was able to gain its magical powers, thus before it was infused with the 4 sacred elements to become the Four Sword? So I do feel like that around this time, when the Picori blade was discovered in Minish Cap, and thus later on it becomes the Four Sword, I do feel that it does have some magical capabilities, and were gifts from the great fairies scattered across Hyrule. Because when you do think about it, Link actually does encounter multiple variations of great fairies in Hyrule and Minish Cap, and then in Four Swords he's actually gifted gifts from the great fairies in Four Swords, but also entrusting him with keys to gain access to Vati's castle and the Palace of Winds. So I do feel like that some of the magical elements that the Four Swords also contains also comes from the gifts received from the great fairies before it was sealed away in the sacred chest in the beginning of Minish Cap. So I do. So go ahead.
Something else that you mentioned early on in the podcast was that you felt like the cap that Eslo made was similar to a Triforce
Yes.
kind of in power.
Yes.
And that kind of started the whole thought of maybe because the three great fairies created the Triforce.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the Picori have a similar power to create something of similar power to the Triforce, that they might have a closer relation than we thought.
Exactly, and I do feel like because when I do think because another thing that we were mentioning earlier was the number 100 also plays a big role throughout the Zelda universe. But also when I do think about it now, so does the number 3. You know, with three goddesses who created and left behind the golden emblem known as the Triforce. Thus, we have various incarnations of, more variations of great fairies scattered across Hyrule. But also, there are 3 great fairies and 4 swords who gave the hero the 4 sword gifts and keys for the hero to actually go up into Vati's palace and the Palace of Winds. So I do feel like that there are multiple variations and gifts. But as far as in regards to the magical cap, I do feel like that the magical cap created by Eslo that is able to grant desires of those who either have a pure heart or an evil heart definitely shares the same capabilities as the Triforce.
Right, which it's similar as it has just as much power to be used by someone who has a pure heart than that who's somebody who has a corrupted heart. It works the same as the Triforce, that they can wish for whatever they want, and the reaction depends on how corrupt they are.
Exactly.
Kind of raises a question in my mind, actually.
Go ahead.
Okay, so remember earlier when I said I always wondered where the Minish came from, like when they descended from the sky?
Mm-hmm.
I could be completely off base with this, but what if the Minish, or the Picori rather, come from the same realm as the goddesses?
Oh.
Because if you think about it, there are so many similarities between them, especially after piecing everything together. What if they come from the same realm?
I actually really do like this theory. But go on.
The only thing I can gather from this is they descended from the sky. That was confirmed in the Minish Cap during its opening. They descended from the sky, gave the hero of men a sword and a golden light.
Mm-hmm.
But they never even went into detail as to where they descended from, nor how they were able to even do this in the first place.
Very similar to the goddesses. Sword,
Exactly.
power that can be used for corrupt reasons as well.
Yeah, exactly. So if you think about it, putting the pieces together, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's no confirmation on it, but what if that's the case? What do you think?
I like that theory.
I do like the theory because
Yeah.
when you do think about it, because Eslo was the one who created the magical cap. So I feel like that maybe, with him just being a wise elder Minish, I do feel like that maybe that he might have had a connection to the royal family of Hyrule. Because when you do think about it, he was the one who started the gate to the Elemental Sanctuary, which is where like a portal to where both the Highlands and the Minish can interact for every 100 years.
What if it's more than that, though? What if he actually had a connection to the goddesses? Because if you think about it, the goddesses, aka the Triforce, and that magical hat have similar powers. You pointed this out earlier. The Triforce can grant the wishes of anyone with a pure heart, but anyone with a corrupted heart can also have its wishes granted and things get corrupted. The hat that was created by Eslo has the exact same kind of power. The only difference is, one has to wear the hat that Ezra was created, and everyone who wants to make a wish on the Triforce would have to be able to touch it. But that's the only difference.
Exactly.
Where did the hat go?
After the Minish Cap ended and Ezra returned to normal, he took the cap back in his possession back through the door before he closed it.
Yeah, Ezra
So
took it back.
Could that mean that it will make a reappearance in a way?
It's possible.
In theory, yeah.
Yeah, in theory.
It could be a
Okay.
possibility. It could be a possibility because when you do think about it, imagine if because when you do think about it, imagine if Link in Breath of the Wild 2, actually gains double the power to help aid him. Since we already know that Hyrule is now starting to become in ruins in Breath of the Wild 2, and thus, we're seeing a return of Ganondorf come in. We don't know what happened to Zelda, but we did see her disappear. We already know that the Master Sword has already been destroyed, but I do feel like maybe if Link was able to discover the Elemental Sanctuary and thus meets Ezlo, who probably will say something like, "Hey, you look like a certain hero that I used to, be with, but you're not him." And probably, this Link can definitely explain to Ezlo about, the events that happened in the past. And then Link can probably use the power of the magical cap created by Ezlo to help aid him on his quest to find Zelda. Because, again, we don't know where she is. And this, the Hero of the Wild has yet to discover the Triforce, because he hasn't discovered it yet. So maybe if he were to find Ezlo for the first time, he can probably use the magical cap as like a key and like a guide to help him discover the power of the Triforce, even though Zelda herself was able to use that power at the end of Breath of the Wild, to eradicate Calamity Ganon.
Right.
But that definitely could be a possibility now.
Yeah.
Alrighty now. Alright. So now we're gonna jump into our final question of this amazing, incredible podcast. So now, we already talked about Skyward Sword. We talked about Minish Cap. We talked about the current game that we're talking about, Four Swords. And now, we already know that after Four Swords, down the timeline, Ocarina of Time is now going to play a very important role next, because when you do think about it, Ocarina of Time was the one that started the 3 timeline split. So my final question to everybody here in this voice chat: how do you think that Four Swords leads up to the events of Ocarina of Time and the beginning of the journey of the Hero of Time?
Well, so how we hear is like possibly like after the events, like after stealing Vati, like say like maybe another 100 years have passed. Yeah, like the king of the Gerudo tribe was born, being Ganondorf. So like maybe that's when like that's probably he started growing up and more of the evil started to begin, and then. And eventually, it came to the birth of Princess Zelda, eventually to the birth of the hero.
Very interesting. T-Shaw?
So, now that I think about it now, this theory that I came across, the Triforce theory, I did think that maybe Four Swords could have tied into Ocarina of Time through that way, but I can still say the theory if you want and see if it
absolutely.
does
Go
correlate
ahead.
that way.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this does just kind of span through like the entire Zelda series itself. The Triforce theory.
Oh boy, here we go.
It just explains that that there's a fourth piece to the Triforce that would fit right in the middle. and
Wait.
and
The cat.
Wait.
the what?
Is that crazy? Is that a crazy thought to think that maybe the fourth piece of the Triforce could be the cap?
Ooh,
A
actually,
Oh!
possibility.
I honestly,
You
I like
know?
this one.
Yeah.
Go on.
That's interesting.
and that actually makes me think that the Force Sword and the Triforce are closer related to each other than we think, because when Link splits into 4, you have regular green to represent the Triforce of Courage, red to represent the Triforce of Power, blue to represent the Triforce of Wisdom, and then there's purple. And that this theory says it could possibly be like the Triforce of Kindness, perhaps, but and that just kind of okay. I lost my train of thought, but with that fourth piece, the fourth piece could be purple, and since there's a purple Link, and whatever power it might hold is represented by the purple Force Sword, I guess. And on Ocarina of Time's Hylian shield, on the shield you see the Triforce itself,
Yes.
right? And
Right.
at the very bottom, you see a lone triangle down there. Could that possibly be that the representation of the fourth piece, or that could be carried over from Force Sword?
If you think
And
about it,
yeah,
that's possible because that lone triangle on the bottom is actually upside down. The rest of them are not. The hole in the middle of the Triforce is upside down.
Right.
So you could take that lone triangle and piece it in the direct center, and it would fit.
I do like this one.
I
and
have
it's
another crazy theory
Go ahead, Rosie.
whenever you want to.
Lay it on us.
yeah, go
Okay.
for it.
In the Minish Cap, Link had to go get the sword reforged using the elements of earth, fire, water, and wind. Those are 4, when in usually other Zelda games we're only collecting from earth, fire, and water. And here's where the crazy theory comes in, and how I think maybe Breath of the Wild 2 could re-tie into the Pakoris and the Force Sword, is that in the trailers that we've gotten with Breath of the Wild 2, there's a lot of talking about being in the sky, and it shows him flying a lot, and maybe that is bringing back the power and the importance of wind?
Oh.
You know, that's actually a pretty good theory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then go on what you're saying, like how maybe what you were gonna say earlier, Rosie, that the fourth piece probably could be in relation to Ezlo's magical cap.
Well, yeah, if he has access to the Pakoris again, Ezlo has the cap, and he could possibly have the fourth piece of the Triforce, which would gain Link access to the fourth element, wind.
That's a really interesting theory to think about, because when you do think about it, the rest of the Zelda history, most of the pieces of the Triforce were sealed away or hidden somewhere throughout across the land. Because when you do think about it, in the first Legend of Zelda on the NES, we only had 2 pieces of the Triforce, being the Triforce of Wisdom, that Link was able to go forth and to restore before entering Death Mountain. And thus we already knew that Ganon had the Triforce of Power. But after the events of Zelda NES, we go off to Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. I fucking hate that game.
Same.
We all hate it.
But carry on.
We hate it.
Same, yeah.
Talk about Zelda 2.
Even,
Nobody talked about
even,
Zelda
even,
2.
even though I have to cover it one day. Oh boy.
Have fun
Oh
with
no.
that.
I will. Anyway, so in the events of Zelda 2, and even it states in both the Hyrule Encyclopedia and the manual, we already know that Zelda was put to sleep. Zelda was put to sleep, and Impa gives Link a task to go put up I think it's sacred crystals. 6 sacred crystals and scrolls that ought to be set foot on one of the statues in the palaces. But also, in the Great Palace, which is the final dungeon in Zelda 2, we do see a wise man who carries a piece of the Triforce, and that piece of the Triforce is confirmed to be the Triforce of Courage, but which was sealed away by the king himself. So we do already know that Link's quest in Zelda 2 was a trial set forth by the king himself to see if he was worthy and who was worthy enough to obtain the Triforce of Courage, which is why Link was able to use all 3 pieces to actually obtain the 3 Triforce pieces to awaken Zelda.
Yeah.
So maybe there could be a possibility that this 4th Triforce is probably hidden somewhere, maybe waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, but there's actually one more thing. Like, your point is that the Triforce is constantly split up a lot.
Yes.
I know this is not on the child timeline, but there is another instance in where this happened. The Wind Waker, where the Triforce of Courage is literally shattered into 8 shards.
That is true.
Yep.
What if this 4th Triforce piece really does exist? What if it's in the same state? What if it is for some reason shattered and scattered across the Hyrule, like the land of Hyrule, yet to be discovered?
Very interesting to think about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's plausible.
That definitely is very possible to think about. I do like that. Very, very interesting indeed. But yeah, definitely thinking about like how 4 Swords definitely leads up to Ocarina of Time. Again, for the closing statement, we already know that this game leads up to the events of Ocarina of Time. So, of course, we know that the Hero of Time does not know anything or the whereabouts of the 4 Sword Sanctuary. But I do feel like that somewhere along the lines that young Princess Zelda already knew about it, because I'm sure that probably her descendant of a mother and Impa alone was able to teach her about it, which is why she was able to know about the ancient history of Hyrule in the past, such as learning about the 3 golden goddesses who left both the Triforce. So I feel like that maybe young Zelda at the time probably knew something in regards to the teachings that she learned from both her mother and Impa, but probably didn't bring it forth towards the Hero Time, which is why he doesn't know anything about it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But that is just my theory alone. That is definitely my theory, though. But anyway, guys, that is everything. Thank y'all so much for joining me. Big shout out to my 4 friends, and of course the little purple pipsqueak who doesn't stream.
Yeah, I'll get there one day. Get there. You know what?
Okay, so before we go, do the 4 of you have any closing statements about 4 Swords leading into Ocarina of Time? We'll start with Sora first.
I don't have any closing statements in regards to how it could lead into Ocarina of Time, but I do have one fun fact about the game that I can share.
Yes.
I've actually been holding on to this one.
Do it.
In the Legend of Zelda Four Swords Anniversary Edition, they added something new to the game called the Realm of Memories.
Ooh.
Yep. And it allows you to explore maps from Link's Awakening and A Link to the Past.
Huh.
And it is really cool.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Rosie?
It is actually hard to relate the two to each other since we are switching back to the powers of the Master Sword and Ganon rather than the Four Sword and...
Mute your alerts real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Just letting you know.
Oh yeah, I did. It's all good.
Okay.
Also, whoa! Okay, hold on a minute. But guys, we just got raided by Nick. Yo, what's up, Nick? Nick! Nick! What's going on? Welcome to the stream. Thank you so much. We also have Firebolt. Welcome in. Hope you guys had a great stream. Right now we are doing a Zelda podcast on Four Swords, and we were just about to wrap up. But I really do appreciate you guys coming in. But thank you so much, Nick. Guys, please go follow Nick. He's a good friend of mine. Definitely will leave the link to his Twitch channel in the description below in this YouTube video. So right now, we just finished talking about Four Swords, so now each of us are giving off a closing statement on about Four Swords leading to Ocarina of Time. I think... Wait, Rosie, you already went, right? Or...
We're still going.
Oh yeah, Rosie.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rosie.
I was just saying that I feel like it's hard to compare since we're switching swords and main antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure how I would lead the one into the other.
It's really interesting to think about because, you know, as we were saying about all these swords have been switched from time and time again, especially in other games like in Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. Like those, like there's no Master Sword there. It's just the Phantom Sword and the, you know, the Locomo Sword.
I actually just thought of something crazy. I don't know why I didn't think about this sooner.
Tell me.
Again, this could be something I'm completely off base with, but hear me out.
Yes.
At the end of Skyward Sword, what is the curse put on the hero as well as the bloodline of the Hylian royal family?
Oh.
You'll see where I'm going with this, or you may already have an idea.
Yeah.
But it is said that an evil incarnation of Demise will forever stain the Hyrule bloodline and the hero. Meaning for all eternity, there's going to be an evil incarnation of Demise that basically tries to destroy Hyrule and kill the hero along with the Hylian royal family. So what this could indicate is maybe somehow Vaati might be one of those incarnations.
Interesting.
That's very interesting to think about. Because he might have some connection somewhere to the Demon King Demise. Even though, because we need to think about it, again, as we were saying earlier in the beginning, Vaati was the first person to come to Hyrule to claim and take over the land. Ganondorf just comes later, but only in Ocarina of Time, and does for the rest of the other series.
And let's not forget, Ganondorf has more than one form. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility for Vaati to be in a similar boat where he's also an incarnation of Demise.
That is true.
Interesting.
If the theory about the Bakori, aka the Minish, being connected to the goddesses is true, what if it's also true that Vaati could be connected to Demise in some way?
Oh.
Interesting.
Because if you think about it, Demise and the goddesses kind of have their own connection.
That's very interesting to think about. What about you, Ostafia?
Well, instead, I don't have much to close up. But I do got a little trivia to say about this in regards to Four Swords.
Go ahead.
And first of which is like for Four Swords Adventures, it was actually the first game to actually feature a dungeon that was set entirely within the clouds itself.
That is true.
Second of which is this was the first multiplayer Zelda game we ever had.
Yeah.
Last
You
of
said
which
fourth-
is
You said.
sorry, what?
Oh, wait.
Continue, Sora?
Wait, never mind. I was about to say something like completely off base. You said Four Swords was the first game to introduce a dungeon in the sky, like on the clouds. I was gonna say the Minish Cap was, but then it just dawned on me that the Minish Cap
Yeah,
came
the
out.
Minish Cap
after-
does have a dungeon, the Palace of Winds. And I do feel like
Yeah,
that
but-
maybe... Huh?
Yeah, I was gonna say like the Minish Cap was the first game to do that, but then it dawned on me the Minish Cap came out after Four Swords did.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
That was like 2 years
do
later.
have a lot of sky dungeons in most Zelda games, especially that was showcased in also Skyward Sword. You know, being the last dungeon being the Sky Keep,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe
That's
that
for
was, and I believe if I'm correct, that is the only dungeon that was in the sky, while the other ones
Correct.
while the others remained on the surface.
Yeah.
keep his mini dungeon. Just saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I do feel like that the Palace of Winds from Minish Cap probably could be the same palace that was left over from Minish Cap, and as Vati was able to use it as his own fortress.
This is true.
That could be a possibility. But also, guys, thank y'all so much for being here today. I really do appreciate y'all coming in and talking about the original Four Swords with me. And hopefully, maybe one day, if I can trust emulation, and I know there's 5 of us in here, but hey, we can still include Rosie as a special guest if she's interested. Now, maybe we can all 5 of us can get together, and maybe if I learn to trust emulation one day in the future, maybe we can look into playing Four Swords and look into it.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun time.
That would
Yeah.
definitely be a fun time.
I've actually been trying to find a way to emulate Four Swords Anniversary Edition, but so far I hadn't had any luck.
That would be interesting though. But for anybody who's been if you guys came around to the very end of this video on YouTube, and for those of you guys currently on Twitch chat, thank you all so much for tuning in with us to this amazing podcast. Big shout out to all the follows. Thank you once again, Nick. Nick is also a pro. Can we just take that for a second, y'all? Nick is actually a pro.
Yes.
Yep. Pro
Yeah.
the
He's a pro. And that, my friends, we have concluded The Legend of Zelda Four Swords for the Triforce Tuesdays redo series. So, big round of applause. This game is now completed for the sake of this podcast, and thank you guys for helping me on it. But also, I will leave a link in the description to all their channels, and I'll do it for T-Shaw as well, in case he streams one day.
Sounds good.
But yes, please, and I mean please go follow all my friends who helped me on this podcast. Please go follow Sora, Ostafia, the nerd himself, T-Shaw. And then last but not least, our lovely friend Rosie. So please definitely go check all of them out as usual. But thank y'all for being here. I had a great
Thank
time.
you for having me.
Of course. Hopefully we can include you again for a future podcast. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a lot of
100%
fun.
Agree.
I second that.
That
And
was-
by the way, no closing remarks from me, Kappa. You didn't ask me, Kokiri.
I
Jeez.
know. It's because you haven't streamed yet.
Oh,
He's trying,
wow.
he's trying to single out the
You
purple
see
guy.
that last game they played was Fire Emblem tentative title.
Oh my god.
Oh, I did once.
And actually, and you guys can definitely, I'm gonna deafen myself real quick before we say goodbye. And you guys can hype this up in the Twitch chat. But also, so I will be right back. And before we say goodbye, so I'm gonna deafen myself. But ladies and gentlemen, since now that we have completed Four Swords for the sake of this podcast, we already know what game comes next down the Zelda timeline. So, starting next week from today, ladies and gentlemen, I will be covering this next Zelda game, and we've talked about this game many times today. You guys know this next Zelda game is my favorite game of all time. So, if y'all know me so well, you guys already know what game it is. Y'all know what it is, so please take a listen.
I want that in Breath of the Wild too.
Okay, I missed something, but now I'm concerned. Oh my god! But
You
anyway,
should be concerned.
I should be. But yeah, guys. So down the timeline, we're gonna be playing. I'm gonna be covering my next Zelda game, and also, which is also my favorite game of all time, without a doubt, is Ocarina of Time.
Heart knocker flute.
You know what? We're gonna have a talk.
Heart knocker of time wagon.
I am done with this. I am so done with this. You know, I quit.
Hey, Angel, you the sexy.
Oh my god! And I just heard that sound clip by Angel.
Yeah,
Gosh
I
damn.
heard it.
Yo.
Gosh damn. Of course. Well, we're gonna hear that in the YouTube video, but that's okay. Well, Angel didn't know, so she's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, we're gonna be starting my favorite game of all time, Ocarina, and I'm really excited to be covering this game. No, Angel, you're fine. You're good.
Yeah, it's all good, Angel. No worries.
So
Yeah, no worries.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be covering the Switch version of Ocarina of Time, since in the past I recently have covered the Wii U version. But however, the reason why I want to cover the Switch version compared to the Wii U is because the audio and some of the cutscenes, like from the ending, and the ending of Ocarina of Time are a little bit delayed. So hopefully the Switch version definitely fixes everything, and I know there's no complications with that one. So, ladies and gentlemen, starting next week, we're taking a dive to Ocarina of Time. Let's fucking go.
Yo.
We're diving into my favorite game. Let's freaking go, dude. I love this game to death. You know, this game played a really important role in my childhood, and which is why it is what made me the Zelda fan I am today. Like, honestly, I would not be here right now if it wasn't for Ocarina of Time.
Same thing for me.
Which by the way, that is some facts about me. That is where my name actually comes from.
I never would have guessed.
Yes.
It's a mystery.
It's a mystery.
I thought you already. I thought it was just a play on Picori. Not.
I thought it was some random fart knocker word that he just randomly came up with.
Now you're just asking me to kick your ass. Okay.
Good luck with that.
Shut up. Anyway, so yeah, I will be covering the Switch version, for sure. But again, my name does come from Ocarina of Time. You know, Kokiri, obviously the reference to the Kokiri Forest, and the Born, however, is a reference to how I was born to be a Zelda fan. Now I know y'all are saying, of course, we already know that Link is a Highland in Ocarina of Time. We know that, but you know, again, Ocarina of Time is where the Kokiri Forest is where he started his journey. as a child. So again, Born comes from me becoming a Zelda fan, and then Kokiri is a reference to starting the game at Kokiri 4. So that's where it comes from. So there's a little trivia about me, y'all.
Very cool.
Noise.
But yo, thank y'all so much for being here. For you guys who are watching this on YouTube, I will post the link to all my friends' Twitch channels in the description. And T-Shaw will stream one day.
I did once. It counts.
Once.
It counts.
The purple guy alone.
But there's more. But there comes more. But yes, please go follow Sora. Sora is also into Zelda. Please go follow Ostafia. Ostafia you'll be returning pretty soon, right?
Yep, sometime in the summer. Coming soon, like in a...
T-Shaw will see
soon
pretty
to
soon.
a theater near you.
But also,
TV.
but
near you.
again, if you guys love Zelda as well, our lovely friend Rosie, if I'm correct, you stream Zelda every Friday, just like how I stream Zelda every Tuesday.
My schedule has made some changes, but I'm hoping to implement Zelda into future streams. I'm kind of addicted to Kirby at the moment.
Hey, aren't we all? Aren't we all? Aren't we all? So anyway, guys, so tomorrow here on Twitch, I will be back, and tomorrow we're gonna take a dive back into Kingdom Hearts for the Kingdom Hearts Marathon. I'll be playing more Kingdom Hearts 1 Proud Mode, so I'm not ready to die again. Oh boy.
I'm so proud of you for trying.
You know what? I'm tired of this shit, man. I'm tired of your crap. I'm sick of this. But yeah, we'll be diving back into Kingdom Hearts 1 for my first time doing Proud Mode tomorrow. But real quick, you guys, before we say goodbye to each other, I think we need to go on a raid.
Oh, fun.
Let's go send someone our love for Zelda.
Thank you, Goofy. Thank you.
I am done with everything. I am so done with everything right now. I'm just gonna look at this YouTube video and just be like, what the fuck just happened here, man? Okay, so I believe we are going to go send our love to our good friend Mo Chocolate. I haven't rated him in a while, but he's a good friend of mine, and he's playing some Sonic Colors Ultimate.
Oh.
So let's go see her. Let's go see her. Let's go send a raid. I'm gonna send you guys over to my buddy Mo, a really good friend of mine. So let's go raid him. If I can spell his name correctly, which I do think he does want to come to KH Reconnect next year, so that'll be exciting. But yeah, feel free to copy and paste that raid message. It is for everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in to my first ever podcast. Everybody here in the voice chat, you guys did an amazing job. Thank y'all for being here once again. Okay,
Thank you.
I'll be right back real quick. But let's all say goodbye to the Twitch chat and both YouTube people as well. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Later. Hope to see you all again.
Thank y'all. And also, T-Charles a nerd.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ha! Yeah!
Yeah.
Yeah.